Welcome back to Music 239, Intro to World Music. We begin this episode with music of China. Also included in your text is music of Hong Kong and Singapore. We will be beginning, though, by talking about some of the religious influences. On your PowerPoint, the picture that you see here is of the Qingdao University Chinese Orchestra. And I had the opportunity to work with this orchestra in Qingdao at the university there. And the instruments that you see displayed there are many of the instruments that we're going to be talking about during this unit of the course. So one of the most important things you can do in this unit is to pay attention to what the instruments' names are and what they are like. And that's one of the things that we're going to focus on, as well as the music that is in your text. So let's start by talking about the religious influences on China. And the first of these that your books list is Taoism. It comes from a book entitled Tao Te Ching, and the Tao Te Ching is a book that has been around for a long time. The Tao Te Ching, or Tao Te Ching, as you sometimes see it in English translation, was supposedly written by somebody named Lao Tzu, but in fact that Lao Tzu is actually the better pronunciation, and it actually may not refer to an actual person, but to a group of people, and over the centuries these pieces of literature were collected. Here's an example. This is number 37 from the Tao Te Ching. The whole idea being that sometimes if you want something to happen, then you have to do the opposite. Your book talks about yin and yang. It talks about the male and female. You can read what your book says about it, but this particular piece of work is one that is typical of Tao Te Ching and Taoism. Tao abides in non-action, yet nothing is left undone. If kings and lords observed this, the 10,000 things would develop naturally. If they still desired to act, they would return to the simplicity of the formless substance. Without form, there is no desire. Without desire, there is tranquility. And in this way, all things would be at peace. So in this case, if you want something, the best thing to do is to not desire it. It seems to be incongruous. It seems to be counterproductive. But in fact, this is the way of the Tao, which is what Tao actually means, is way. This particular translation, by the way, there are many translations, and this one by Xiaofu Feng and Jane English is quite a good one. And if you're looking for a translation of Tao Te Ching, you might look into this one. So on your PowerPoint, then, you can see the Chinese characters for Tao, the way, De, virtue, and Jing, meaning classic. You also see on these three words the characters and also the pinyin, which is the phoneticization of the pronunciation of Chinese words. And on each of these words, there is a different tone marking, so that the word Tao is the tone that starts high and ends low. This is actually second tone, Tao. The second one is fourth tone, starting low and ending high, De. And then finally, Jing is first tone, straight across. And then there is a third tone that we'll talk about later. But the tones in Chinese are very important, and your book has an explanation of those, and also it has a pronunciation guide of how to pronounce some of these. And that's good because you can learn to pronounce the instrument names correctly when you see them. So Taoism, one of the religious influences. Another one is Confucianism. And here's a picture that was taken of me in a very famous place. And the characters on the stone marker there actually are the name of the town, Chufu, where Confucius actually had his main headquarters and where his temple were and where his followers ultimately learned Confucianism, which lasted for many thousands of years in China. Interestingly, the characters here were written in a famous person's calligraphy. Anybody guess who it is? It's actually Chairman Mao's calligraphy that was used to put the words Chufu on the stone marker there and at the temple of Confucius. The third religion, Buddhism, very popular in China, and the picture I have on your PowerPoint is of an altar at a Buddhist temple. This was actually taken in Guangzhou, China, in the south of China. One of the things that you can see to the far right of your photo, you can see a bowl, a large bowl, and I have a replica of it here that I wanted to play for you, because if you go to a Buddhist temple to be blessed by the monk, one of the things that the monk will do is to play a tone on the singing bowl. These are also known as Tibetan singing bowls, because you can not only produce a tone by striking the edge of the bowl, but you can then produce a residual vibration by moving around the outside and creating a tone that the Buddhists believe has healing properties. If you go to YouTube and type in Tibetan singing bowl, you can find lots of examples of people with multiple bowls, getting them to produce sympathetic vibrations with each other and creating some amazing aural effects. So you might check that out on the internet. There's some excellent examples of singing bowls. But the larger one that you see in this photo was used for blessings of various types. At a Buddhist shrine, people will sometimes hang pictures of their departed relatives, like the ones on the little yellow pieces of plastic that you see here in this photo. And then they'll bring fruit and food to leave for their departed relatives at the shrine at the Buddhist temple. Here, next shot is a photo of a Buddhist monk blessing babies. And these were all babies that had been adopted from China by U.S. parents. And one of them was mine. My wife and I adopted a child from China back in 2005. And this was a picture that was taken shortly after that. And so in this case, the monk is giving a cherry tomato to the babies as a gift for coming and receiving his blessing. Now, Christian missionaries also had a major influence in China, particularly in the late 19th century. This caused musically a lot of introduction of American popular songs from the late 19th and early 20th century into China. One of the most well-known songs in China is O Susanna. Anybody know that song here? Yeah, you know that song? And who wrote that song? Stephen Foster wrote that song. Yes, Stephen Foster wrote that song. Can anybody sing it? Anybody know that song? No, it's not that. Not She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain. Oh, don't you cry for me. From Alabama with the banjo on my knee. Try, yeah. And then the verse goes, it rained all night, the night I left. The weather, it was dry. Got so hot I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry. And it's a nonsense song, right? It rained so hard the night I left, the weather it was dry. It got so hot I froze to death. So it basically means opposites, almost like Tao Te Ching when you think about it. But it's a well-known tune in China. I would say a lot of people in China know this tune. And they know it because the missionaries brought it over when it was a popular song in the early 20th century. And when I was in China most recently, which was in the summer of 2010, I turned on a children's program and heard a song about a watermelon to the tune of O Susanna. And it went something like this. Dashi gua, womanichi chushi gua. Dashi gua, womanichi chushi gua. Okay, now you're going to learn to sing that song. Okay, we're gonna sing it. Okay, dashi gua, womanichi chushi gua. Dashi gua, womanichi chushi gua. What does it mean? Big watermelon, dashi gua. Big watermelon, dashi gua. Womanichi chushi gua. We together eat watermelon. That's what it means. And so kids are watching this show and they're absorbing this information and they think that this is a Chinese song. But in fact, the song was written by Stephen Foster and taken over to China by missionaries. And so you see an influence of religion on the music of a nation that way. So there's hundreds of tunes that are in that kind of category that have been adapted into the mainstream of music, particularly for children in China. And this is an example. On your CDs, you see an example from Hong Kong of contemporary Christian music, a song called Praise from Heaven and Earth. And it's on CD 4, track 6. I'm going to let you listen to that one on your own. You can go to your CDs and listen to that track. I'm not going to play it for you in class, but it is a good example of contemporary Christian music in Hong Kong. Thus, you see some of the influences of religion in China. Now, as I mentioned previously, we're going to be doing a lot of work with the instruments of traditional Chinese music in this class. And I have a list of them here on your PowerPoint slide that refers to the songs on your CDs in which they appear. The first of these is the pipa, which you find on the song Great Waves Washing the Sands. What I want to do today is to show you a pipa. First, though, let me also show you the photo on the PowerPoint of the pipa class that I took when I was in China a couple of years ago. And I was taken to see this group of 24 girls, probably between the ages of 10 and 12, all playing together in a pipa class. And they were incredibly good because there was a waiting list of about 100 students to get into this class, and they only took 24. And so you can bet that the ones that were in it were very, very good at what they did. Amazing abilities, and they practice incredibly hard to be able to play these instruments. That's one of the things that I found about my visits to China and visiting Chinese music students is that they all work extremely hard. They practice all the time. When I was at Qingdao University, you had to wait in line to get a practice room. They probably had 100 practice rooms in this building, and all of them were always full every time that the building was open. So the students were practicing all the time, and this group was no exception. They had obviously practiced very hard, and they played extremely well. So if we go back to our instrument list here, our first one on there is the pipa, and this is what the instrument looks like up close. It's sort of pear-shaped, almost like a lute, except it doesn't have as deep of a back as a lute would have. There are 4 strings tuned to A, D, E, A, and it's a fretted instrument that pitch is changed by placing the fingers in different positions in between the frets in the recessed area here. So what I'm going to do is to grab a chair and do a little bit of prep work here to show you how this instrument is played. I'm not a peepah player myself, so be aware that what you're seeing here is just a cursory demonstration. But one of the things that has to be done is you have to put fake fingernails on your right hand, unless you are willing to spend time growing fingernails like some guitarists do. But that's pretty rare. Most of the time, the players will have to actually take what's almost like medical tape and tape the picks to their fingers on the right hand only. Now, as I'm doing this, your text has an example of peepah music that you see listed on your PowerPoint, the great waves washing the sands. And this is a famous piece by the peepah player Ah Bing, who is well known throughout China as a very famous player. You can read all about him in your text because there's some controversy about who he really was and what he really was. But I'll let your text explain that to you a little bit more detail. But the pronunciation of his name is very important both of the syllables of his name are in first tone, which is the one that goes straight across. So instead of Ah Bing or Ah Bing, as you might be inclined to pronounce it, both of the tones are actually equal in emphasis. So it's Ah Bing. Everybody say that. Ah Bing. And almost sing it. Ah Bing. Ah Bing. Yeah, good. So you're learning a little bit about the tones in Chinese. Now let's talk a little bit about the actual technique of playing the peepah, because your book does have some information on that. If you look ahead to the example on the page that talks about the peepah itself, where example 8.2 is, if you look at that page, you'll see some description of the different types of strokes necessary to play it. Now I've finally got all 5 picks on there, and you almost feel like you can claw somebody now. It's a little kind of a scary feeling. But if you look at the description there, tan means a rightward pluck with the index finger. So rightward would mean going towards the right like this, in like this. Whereas tiao is a stroke from the opposite direction with the thumb, like this. So tan, tiao. Those are the 2 first strokes. Then there's gun, which is a roll produced by doing tan, tiao together in sequence. And then finally, lun, which is a rolling with all of the fingers to produce almost a rolling effect, like you'd be rolling with a mallet instrument, for example. So, realizing that I'm not a peepah player, with that disclaimer in mind, let me just play a couple of things here that show you, first of all, what it's like to fret the different notes. And the sound, of course, there's tan, tiao, tan, tiao. And then as you fret the instrument, then it becomes a chromatic instrument because each of the frets is a different half step. So this instrument is actually tuned like a guitar would be with half step equal tempered tuning. That's not the case with all of the instruments we're going to look at, but the four different pitches, A, D, E, A, in which it's tuned, changed by the tuning pegs up here, and then the actual tuning and the changing of the pitches here. So tan tiao, and then the gun going back and forth very quickly between tan and tiao, and then the last one. Now, imagine that going 10 times faster than I'm able to do it, and you'll get an idea of what it's like to be a pipa player. Anybody here want to do it? Anybody want to learn? You can, by the way. We do have a class that I've told you about, and if you would like to become a pipa player, particularly if you already play the guitar, this is a real easy crossover to make if you're already a guitarist. So think about that, because there are some opportunities that we have, as I've mentioned, for you to learn to play these instruments. So let me know about that. But that's the basics of the pipa. Now, you're recording on track 311 for that. So does everybody hear the rolling effects that are going on some of the sustained notes? Because since the instrument can't sustain a note any longer than the string is vibrating, that's as long as it's going to be able to sustain it. So for that reason, there's the roll effect of having all of the fingers play in sequence with each other in a very fast motion. And I can tell you from the experiences of students who have tried to learn how to play it, that is the hardest thing to learn how to do on this instrument, is to coordinate the right hand fingers in such a way that they are playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That takes years of practice, and it's the kind of thing that you almost needed to have learned when you were as old as the girls that you saw in the photo in the pipa class, because it really requires quite a bit of control and finger dexterity that some of us don't have, and I'm certainly in that category myself. So that's a brief introduction to the pipa. So make sure you know that instrument and know what tune goes with it. We'll continue on Friday. Remember, though, that if you are interested in doing a Chinese instrument, you can even change your topic for your final project, and I'd be glad to talk to you about that, or email me about it if you have an interest in doing that. We continue now with some live music performance by two professors from Qingdao University who have done some collaborations with us here at Missouri State. Meng Lei is a Diza player and teacher at Qingdao University. Sun Li is a Kuzhang player and teacher, and you will see both of those instruments played here in the segments which follow. Please enjoy these performances. The next segment that you're going to see is a recording of a group of 24 pipa players, young girls from the ages of 6 through 10, that I had the opportunity to record in Qingdao. Their teacher, Xiao Shoucheng, is a retired emeritus faculty member from Qingdao University, and she has this rehearsals for this ensemble on Sunday nights, 2 hours. It's a very competitive auditioned group to get in. There's a waiting list, and you'll see the proficiency level of these players as you hear them. It really indicates in many ways the work ethic that the Chinese students have, particularly in the music field. I hope you enjoy this pipa ensemble.
第一条我们是练这个强弱兼有的这样一个练习，好吧？南正步，速度，当滴当当当滴答到，预备，走。